You seem hungry. Good thing your table is ready with Saturday Omaha.
Saturday Omaha.
Eat this. Hey, this is Dave with Saturday, and we are sitting in studio with a wonderful guest who provides both cold and nice hot drinks and other things to warm folks up to the Omaha community, and that is Autumn Pruitt of Hardy Coffee. Autumn, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing very well, and thanks for taking time out to come and talk with me today.
Of course. There's nothing that I like talking about more, so it's fun to have a chance to tell people about what we get to do.
Fantastic. Well, so we had talked very briefly off mic. The dates sort of like aligned, the coffee beans lined up, were ground correctly, and we are not even 48 hours past your 15-year anniversary for Hardy Coffee.
It is, yeah. So we actually started the bakery piece of the business first.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So,
okay.
yeah, we started Bliss Old Market Bakery, and that was 15 years ago on February 10th. And so we have had a little bit of a metamorphosis of our brand over the years, but began the bakery first, and that was half a lifetime ago now.
Being that, it is Hardy Coffee now, but very briefly, tell me just a little bit about the bakery and kind of how it got started, because I'm nosy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're here for, right?
Yes.
So started the bakery piece of the business first. I went to school for business and humanities, which obviously means you need to start a bakery, right?
Of course.
So I moved back to Omaha in 2009 and started working at a bakery in the Old Market, and I loved it. It was one of those things where I went to school thinking that this is something that I wanted to do, but I really wanted to make sure that like this ambition and dream that I had matched up with the reality of 4 a.m. start times and commercial mixers and all of the things that go with it. And so I got a job just as a baker, and it turns out I did love it. And so did that for about a year before I purchased the bakery from the gal that owned it before me. And so started that piece of the business first. And then at the time, we were just subleasing from what was then Aroma's Coffee House down in the Old Market. And about a year and a half later, we had the chance to buy the coffee shop too. And so it was just kind of slow, steady growth over the years where what started with one passion really grew into another. And then we were able to continue to find new ways to serve our customers over the years.
Having read quite a few books on baking and pizza and things like that, but especially like bread baking or anything that has to deal with dough, reading a baker's schedule for an actual bakery, in my opinion, it will wear you out just reading it, because the time frames, you're way early in the morning and you have quite a tight timeline depending on what you're doing, and there's a lot of processes that once they get moving, you have to know what happens next. Otherwise, you're going to have a rather large issue.
Yeah, the yeast is kind of the boss in those situations. You are at its mercy once things get going. But and I think that's some of the advice that I give to people that want to start any business is to say, man, it's so helpful to work in the industry before you do it on your own, because it just makes sure that this thing that you think that you love, that you have a framework that you're already learning from experts before you step into it and are the person in charge. And so I was so grateful for the time that I spent doing that, and obviously baked a ton on my own, just in my home growing up with my grandparents, in my tiny apartment in Tennessee when I lived there. I was experimenting throughout my whole life in the kitchen, but there's just something different about doing it for a paying customer versus doing it for your friends. And then doing it for your paying customer is kind of that next level of responsibility.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, especially with, baking, making sure that things are ready to go when those doors open at whatever time they open, and, lining all of that up. And like you said, the yeast with depending on temperatures outside or humidity or what any of those things are happening. And it's once it gets going, man, it's a living, breathing thing,
really
breathing
is.
CO2 into your dough. So, but moving forward to coffee then. So you purchased the bakery and the coffee side of things. And then where was the original first Hardy Coffee then?
So we started the bakery, purchased the coffee shop downtown, opened our second Aromas location in Benson. And then in 2015, we started roasting under the name Hardy Coffee Company. And so it's so funny in retrospect because it always made sense in our own brains how those things were separate. Like we thought, Bliss Bakery is doing the baking. Aroma's Coffee House is already a brand that's established here, so we wanted to continue doing that. We wanted to wholesale coffee to other shops and restaurants, and we were worried at first that maybe if it was under the same brand as our coffee shop, that people wouldn't want to be in direct competition. And so that was kind of the idea initially. And this maybe sounds like gibberish in hindsight, but it was to say like, well, let's do roasting under its own thing, and then we'll have these brands that can operate in different spaces. But everybody's eyes did what yours just did, and they really glazed over once we had multiple brands in the same space. And so it was before we opened our Highlander location, we decided, okay, we just need to simplify our messaging. We need to clarify what we're doing. And every piece of the business and every part of the business is going to be under one name and one mark. And so that's when we took this thing that was created in 2015 and really made it the overarching and the only brand in 2018 when we opened our Highlander location.
Gotcha. That makes sense, though. I could see how, as a business owner, you're trying to figure out how the brands will be received, and for your specific type of marketing, be that wholesale or in shop or whatever, how does that need to happen? And like you said, so that you don't want to create some type of competition that you don't want.
Right.
And so I could see where that would be a complex decision to make, but it sounds like the focal point of where everything ended up was focusing and kind of doubling down on the Hardy brand and making it very strong then in all aspects of everything that you guys deliver then.
Yeah, I think what we discovered is that people wanted the brand recognition to say, oh yeah, I've been to this coffee shop before, I enjoyed what I had, and now I can get it at this other cafe. And so our wholesale partners actually really like that. We still offer private label, but a lot of people choose to have our brand on their shelves as a way to say like, oh yeah, we're choosing local, and we have the support of this local roastery to help us serve this coffee with confidence. And so it's funny, like you can map out all of the reasons that you would make a decision, but when the rubber hits the road, you just may need to pivot as you go and say like, okay, we had a good reason for this, but what customers are telling us is different, and so we're going to change directions.
I could see that. And then, just that if you get a cup of Hardy coffee, be it in one area or another, or one vendor or another, that's like, hey, ooh, cool, that's my cup of coffee. Like I can get that, or those beans, I am familiar with those, and I can get that as well. So,
and I think the other piece of it is I just really love the brand Hardy too. I think once we got into it, we had created Bliss Old Market Bakery, but we had inherited Aroma's Coffee House, that name, and we had tried to update the logo and we tried to make it our own, but at the end of the day, it just felt pretty generic, the name itself. And so when we were able to lean into something that we had really created with intentionality and with a story behind it, Hardy Coffee Company just felt like a really strong brand that we were able to go all in on. And
but Autumn, that makes me ask, what is the story behind it?
Well, I mean, Hardy's a real word, obviously. It means like resilient and robust and able to endure difficult things, but it also happens to be my maiden name. And so for me, it just felt like it was this double meaning, but also hopefully something that people didn't have to try and figure out how to pronounce or, try to look it up in the dictionary as they go. It felt very approachable, but a way that I could also honor my parents in the process. And I think in the back of my mind, it always just held that extra layer of meaning for me.
Yeah, it's got your heart behind Hardy Coffee.
Does. Look at that, Dave.
It was meant to be. It was meant to be. So the location in Benson, then, which is there now as Hardy Coffee, same building there, same spot. Mm-hmm. By the way, one of the coolest walk-up coffee windows in the history of ever.
Oh, well, thank you.
And also, I think after 2020 sometime, you installed a doorbell there as well, which is very cool. If you park over there, you can go to Virtuoso and go get a really good slice of pizza and then finish your day with walking up to the walk-up window at Hardy. Both of them have walk-up windows, which is very, very cool.
Benson,
So cool.
There's good food on every side of the street.
Very true. Very true. And so was Highlander the second Hardy location then from there?
Technically, we rebranded everything at about the same time, and it was when we opened Highlander. But so 11th and Jones downtown was the initial location.
Okay.
Benson, 60th Ave and Maple was our second shop. Highlander on 30th Ave 30th Street, and right between Hamilton and Lake is the Highlander location. That's where we moved our roasting facility and the bakery, and we have a cafe. And then we opened our drive-through location on 144th and just off I-80. That was in 2021. It's been... We started doing that in the midst of all things COVID, and then we're able to open that before the end of 21.
So two things regarding Highlander. One, and because you gave me an excellent segue by mentioning COVID there, I have to thank you and your staff personally. So your Highlander location, you just looked at me like, what on earth is he about to say? Your staff at Highlander, especially during COVID when everything was very tightly locked down, your staff did curbside.
We did.
And they braved every weather condition imaginable to fuel my morning with a wonderful cold brew with half and half on the regular. I think they got used to seeing my car, and you had it where I could just call in on the way and they would have it ready to rock and ready to go. But the staff up there and all the Hardy locations I've visited, just to be clear, but the Highlander holds kind of a special place in my heart. Just the staff was always so kind and knew who I was and provided, a nice. I think restaurants in general really provided a sense of normalcy, comfort, and those things in times that were very challenging for numerous reasons. So thanks for that, by the way.
Well, thank you for choosing us. I think we talk about with our team all the time that we don't serve magical coffee. Like, it can't solve our customers' problems.
I don't know about that.
My roaster also pushes back on that. But I think, we can't solve the biggest problems in your day. Mm-hmm. But we should never make them worse. And so there should be this opportunity where hopefully, even if it's just for the 20 seconds somebody's in line or the couple of minutes that you're interacting over the bar or over the phone, to say, how do I see you as an individual? How do I spend this moment with you and provide a product that was worth the extra effort of calling, of stopping, of coming in? And so we continue to hire just fantastic people that take that to heart. And so I'm glad that was your experience.
Truly. And it's wonderful to have somebody behind that counter or that walks your drink out to you or whatever that does give you that smile. Mm. And, you never know what type of day somebody's been having or week or whatever, or, everything. But a smile and a cup of coffee sure is a great way to enrich your day. And I really like that, what you said there is, maybe it doesn't fix everything, but let's not make your day worse. That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, including also at the Highlander building, and you alluded to this just a second ago. So you roast beans.
We do.
So tell me about the awesome facility that is there. You have your own, Hardy garage doors and things that exist there, and secretive shipments of beans and trucks and things that go places. But yeah, exactly. No, but tell us about the roasting lab. What happens in a roasting lab, and what all types of things do you do there?
We do a lot of roasting, as you might imagine. But let me start from when we started roasting.
Yeah.
So in 2015, we had the chance to actually pivot from wholesaling coffee from other fantastic roasters to starting to do it ourselves. And it was something where it felt like that was going to be a good fit for us pretty early on. I think in the same way as a baker, it's a beautiful experience when you can see every ingredient and step of the process. And so if you want to make adjustments or tweaks, you have every variable at your disposal to do that. And when we were receiving coffee from other roasters, those were the coffees that were available. It was
Sure.
like, do you want this one or that one? There's quite a few, but at the end of the day, that is the extent of the control that you had. And I think that when we thought about controlling other pieces of our menu, it just felt really good to be able to do that from start to finish. That being said, I had not roasted coffee before, and so it was really important to hire somebody that understood that process so well, that had more experience than I did. I consistently hire people that are more talented than I am, and then we learn from each other. And so at the time Nick Tabor came on, he had been roasting at Beansmith before that, had been in specialty coffee for 8 years, and really helped us launch that program to say, how does this work? And what have we learned from a cafe that would then inform the way that we roast and that would create the kind of coffee that our customers were asking for? And so At the time, we were leasing just this tiny 200 square foot room out at Bench, which is like this woodworking shop in North Downtown.
For sure.
And I mean, we had this tiny little roaster that we were renting from Messenger Coffee in Kansas City. And so we had wholesaled from them, and they said, okay, we understand that you want to do this yourself. How do we help? And so just that posture of generosity and a way that they were so helpful in that process was really refreshing to be able to learn from people that had already done it. And so we started very small. We started only roasting for ourselves. We only had 2 shops at the time. And it was a way that we were able to really learn that and grow that. And Nick did a really good job of setting us up well. When we moved to the Highlander location in 2018, we had very much outgrown that current roaster. I mean, we could only do not even a full 5 pounds at a time, which is like shocking to think about with the volume that we're doing now. And so it was a crazy thing. If somebody wanted to, can I throw an extra 5 pounds on this order? He's like, yes, but that will take me an hour. It was like just this,
just adapting.
The peek behind the curtain of what that process actually looks like is just so interesting. But the intentionality it took with every single bean to make sure that the product was great every time, I learned so much and appreciated that so much from him. We moved to the Highlander shop in 2018 and upgraded our roaster to a slightly larger one that we were able to roast for all of our accounts and our own shops. And then just this last year, we upgraded again. So we actually purchased Archetype's old roaster and were able to move it just across town. They were looking for a smaller model and a different brand, and we loved the Genio that they were using. I had already been in talks with some guys in South Africa where it's manufactured and produced. And so it was pretty great to be able to put that in a U-Haul and move it across town instead of having it freighted from a different continent. And it was another small world moment where you realize that you can do that right here in Omaha. And
That's wonderful.
We're able to do a lot more coffee now. We have almost 60 wholesale accounts now. So these are other coffee shops and restaurants and offices that are serving our coffee that we get to go around and help them do that really well. And then also our 4 locations. And so we don't have a huge lineup. We try to keep the actual coffee that we're offering to about like 6 or 7 different offerings at a time, to say like these are ones that we know are excellent, that they're fresh, that we're making sure that there's a spot in the lineup for each of them, so that we're offering different blends or a different single origin, different processing methods at any given time, so that they're quantitatively good, and then there's something that everybody really likes.
Gotcha. Wow, that's a lot. And so what growth from we can only do a 5-pound bag to 60 wholesale accounts and your own, spots and things like that. If there is such a thing, is there a flavor profile or attributes or anything that describe Hardy coffee? Now, I know you said that you had a couple of different, roasts or beans maybe that you're using. Is there something that you shoot for or look for? Is there something that makes a cup of Hardy coffee uniquely Hardy coffee?
The most popular coffee that we serve at all of our locations is our Benchmark blend. And so this is one that I think if you taste this, you think, oh, that tastes like Hardy. It's always going to be a wash process. It's always going to be something from Central America. But I think what's unique about it is that we were able to formulate a coffee that works as an espresso, a cold brew, and a drip. And that is something that a lot of roasters are doing now, but that was pretty innovative at the time. And so most of the time people are sourcing something that is specific for each of those. But because we were a cafe first, I think that we really understood some of the obstacles of that sort of ordering process, where it would be easy to run out of an espresso but still have plenty of like brewed coffee. It would be easy to run out of espresso heading into a weekend, but still have a bag full of coffee that you could use for drip, or to still have cold brew but need espresso. And so to be able to say, okay, how do we source coffee that's going to be bright, that's going to be clean, that's going to be a wash process, that does some of these things really well and that we can use in multiple applications, made inventory management a lot easier. And it also just made this this coffee that wasn't fussy. It was just good and robust, and it was one that we could take a little bit darker in the roasting process so that it held up well in with milk, but it also had some of that brightness when you pulled it as an espresso. And it was just a really interesting approach to it that Nick really came up with initially and that we've been able to run with since then. And so it solved a lot of our problems, which in turn meant that it solved a lot of our wholesale accounts problems too. And so it just meant that we got to kind of be our first customer when it comes to a lot of those things. We solve the problem for ourselves, and then other shops say, oh, that's really helpful.
You had mentioned that, when we were talking about, consistency as far as, when you get a cup of hearty coffee or get beans wherever you are, that it's consistent. Hey, this is our coffee. Mm-hmm. But throughout the types of coffee that you are serving, with that benchmark kind of being a thread that runs through your menu, be it the cold brew or the espresso or things like that, then that's neat. So then it doesn't matter what the execution is. It's like, this is still a cup of hearty coffee, which is very, very cool.
And again, that's just one of the coffees in our lineup at any given time. That's going to be really consistent year round. We get it from a couple of different farms throughout the course of the year to make sure it's fresh and delightful every time. And then we get to be a little more adventurous with the rest of our single origin lineup. And so that's usually what I'm drinking in the mornings. That's my preferred cup. And it's a fun way to say, okay, how do we stretch our imagination on what coffee is? Like, oh, actually, this is really fruit forward, or this one is a honey process and it has these attributes, or this is from this continent, or this one. And I think to be able to go on that journey of taste is really a fun way to approach coffee.
That's super cool. So I think you said roughly around 6 or so types at any given time that somebody could come in and ask for?
It really depends. I mean, coffee is a crop, and so we really want to make sure that what we're offering is something that's fresh and delightful, and so we order in that way. And we want the coffee in our lineup, we want it to die well, which is like, I was just talking about this with our roaster the other day because we were having like the very last taste of this delicious coffee. And he said, you know what, at least it's dying well. Like, we're not like roasting it so long that it's old. It's not getting weird or baggy like before it ever comes to us. We're making sure that we are respecting this coffee that was grown and harvested and processed and shipped and roasted and extracted, and like so many different hands have been in the process of creating this coffee, and it was good all the way through. And so we want to make sure that we're respecting the coffee itself and that we're serving it at its absolute best.
So when you're seeking out a new bean, what is that process like? I mean, do you have a coffee middle person that goes out and finds things? How does a new bean come to the roaster?
We do. We have several relationships in the coffee world. We've worked with some direct trade with farmers over the years, but most of the time we work with an importer in Kansas City called Anthem Coffee Imports, and we have a sales guy. His name is Brian, and he travels the whole wide world and looks for the best coffee out there. And then because we've worked so closely with him over the years, he always has us in mind if he tastes something that says like, oh, you know who should have this. And so we talk to Brian often, and he sends us samples, and most of the time it's, you get a handful of green coffee that you have to sample roast and decide, like, how am I, like, based on this handful of coffee, do we want to spend thousands of dollars to bring this in, or is this a fit for us? And so it is a big decision, and you want to make sure that whatever you choose is one that you don't just, it's not just something you like, but it's something that your customers will also be attracted to, and to make decisions, especially in this really crazy economic market with coffee, that it's so helpful to have advisors on that process.
So you get green beans that come in, and up to a handful, or give or take a little bit, and you have, my guess is with the handful, you have one shot at roasting that handful, and then seeing what happens from there. That sounds exciting, though. It
is, and so we have a team of people in our roasting lab. So it's Joe, who is our main roaster these days. It's Andrew Randolph, who's been on our team forever. It's me. It is we have a handful of people that are part of that process where Joe is going to sample roast this coffee on our teeny tiny roaster, our bullet, and then we do a blind taste test. And so it's so important to us to make sure that you don't know where this coffee is from. You don't know any of the tasting notes. You don't know the processing method, because at the end of the day, if it's not good, all of that's just window dressing. And so when you're getting ready to make a decision about how you're going to spend money to bring this in, you want to do it based on your taste buds. Like, is it good? Is it good enough? Is there something here? Is there something wrong with it? You may not notice if you are being distracted by all of the window dressing. And so we cup those things blind. Cupping in the coffee world, it's, for all intents and purposes, you're making like a tiny cup of cowboy coffee. So you're just putting the grounds in there. You are putting hot water over it. You're letting it sit for 4 minutes. You're breaking the crust on it. You're slurping it. It seems so pretentious when you see people do that. But the reason for that is that you're aerating that coffee over your tongue and your senses, and you're making sure that you're tasting every part of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and saying, like, is this good enough? And so you do that without knowing anything about it. And we don't talk about whether or not we think it's good until everybody's written down, or at least like compiled in their brain, what they're thinking about it. And then we go from there.
So with the tasting process, so you have your crew there, and I love the fact that you said we're going to make some cowboy coffee, and then in the tasting process, you're like, we're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of this coffee. That's perfect.
My dad will be so proud.
With the crew that is tasting the coffee, do you have like a rubric where you're writing down attributes of coffee, or is this just like, sip that coffee, speak into the universe for the panel sitting there, what you thought about it, or what's that moment of reveal where everybody says, oh, this is it, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever?
Yeah, there is a rubric, and that's not something unique to us. That's something that like the Specialty Coffee Association of America has like some pretty standardized things that you're looking for when you're grading coffee or when you're looking at that. So you're looking for like the acidity, you're looking at the body, you're looking at all of these different sensory development tools that you're using all of the time to try and sharpen your senses. That's really what you're going to hone in on in this process. And so, again, it's helpful when people go ahead of you to say, these are things that will help you decide. And so we try to stick to that. But obviously, we're tasting coffee all day, every day. And so it's not always quite so buttoned up. There's most of the time you're just sipping things. You're just talking. You're saying, oh my goodness, do you taste this? Or do you notice that? Or I had this the other day on a different brew method, and this is what really stood out to me. And so it's fun to do it with people.
So we had talked about the benchmark, the Hardy standard that's roasted to be versatile in those different applications. With the other coffees that you're bringing in, do you do a similar thing where you're trying it with milk, or you're trying it as an espresso versus a cold brew? Probably hard to do with a single handful of beans, or do those beans typically get a single or maybe a couple of applications versus being widespread on the different types of brewing methods, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. We have a few limitations at our shops just based on equipment and some of those things, where we can certainly try those items as espresso, but most of the time in our own shops, we're going to have one that's going to be like, we keep benchmark on espresso for now, but we don't go through that process with the sample, but once we commit to buying coffee, we bring that in. We don't just do the sample roast, but we do the real grown-up roast. We're going to say, like, this is when we're going to drop it, and this is the right temperature, and this is the right profile for this coffee. And then we get to really play around with it to say, oh yeah, we prefer this one as a pour over on this brew method, or this one is actually really great in an air pot. Like, this one does well behind the bar, and this is one that we want to make sure that we're brewing and having available for our customers in batch brew. And so we're able to differentiate some of those things. But I think at the same time, so much of it is like, what do our customers like? What do our customers want? And it's fun to hear from them too, to say, this is how I really enjoy this one at home. And so we love having those conversations with people, because it matters how we like it, but what really matters is how our customers like it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's super fun though too, that, you have the benchmark that is available, but also if somebody wants to branch out into a different flavor profile or try something a little different, that you can, change it up or whatever. So that's very, very cool. Well, also at the Highlander building, you have quite the bakery. And having had tasty treats from there, a relative of mine had a very, very good lemon cake that you baked for a birthday. But tell me a little bit about the baking operation, because some coffee shops have folks that bring in baked goods because they probably don't have a bakery or the ability to live on a baker's schedule to make those things happen, etc. So what types of things come out of the Hardy Coffee Bakery? And tell me a little bit about that process, especially since that's actually sort of where things got started, as we learned in the beginning here.
Yeah, that's such an interesting question because it's really evolved over the years. And so when we started, again, it was the bakery first. I was my only employee at the time. And so we said yes to everything. We said yes to anyone that would give us money to make something. And so it's so funny to look back at those first years because we didn't have any boundaries. We just said, if we have a recipe for it, if we can make it, then we will say yes. And so we did some phenomenal wedding cakes, and we did character cakes, and we did cupcakes, and we did stromboli, and it was just like one of those things where I think we were really casting a wide net and trying to figure out, like, how do we make it? Like there's a very real sense of like, not just what am I passionate about and what do I like to do, but how do we pay the bills? And that is like a non-sexy thing to talk about in small business, but it's very real.
Got to stay in business.
But I think what we've discovered over the years is that when we are able to focus, when we choose to do what we're best at, then we actually pay our bills better. And so it's hard because I am a baker at heart, and that is how I started. And so I think that I continue to keep things on the menu longer than I probably should have. And then it was my husband came on full-time in the business, and he started part-time in 2020 and came on and helped launch the drive-thru. And we did a few other projects together. And one day we looked at each other and thought, like, actually, what if we were to run full-time in the same direction every day? Like, how would that look for the work-life balance and like the actual success of this company? And we decided to go all in with both of us at the business. And having his voice look at the menu without a baker brain was actually really helpful. And it hurt a little bit because we stopped doing some things, but it really helped us to create a better company in the process. And so specifically, we don't do cakes anymore. And we don't do cupcakes anymore.
I did not know this.
I know. And we broke so many hearts in the process. And it was interesting. It started actually, this decision started a few years ago. So my mom has been in the baker with me since day one. I mean, just the most wonderful parents that said, we don't have money to contribute to your small business, but we will help in any way we can. And so my parents still work full time, and my mom was in the baker with me every Friday and Saturday for years. And so we would do these projects together. We built wedding cakes. We did ridiculous. We built a replica of the Residence Inn motel downtown. I mean, like, just the things that we said yes to are so silly and turned out so well.
Nice.
But she was diagnosed with breast cancer a few years ago. And it was this moment where we just kind of reevaluated some of these things to say, like, you don't get to choose a lot of things in life. Yeah. You don't get to choose whether or not you get cancer. Like, that's just a hard thing that happens. But you get to choose whether or not you say yes to spending every Saturday of your life making cakes for other people. Mm-hmm. And so we just made that choice. And the tricky thing is, once you make that choice, you still have a full year of wedding contracts that you still need to fulfill. And so, like, through that time, like, we're still making and delivering and figuring out these cakes. A different baker, Ashley Jones, and I worked on so many of those together and got things over the finish line. And then we made the decision to, like, not choose that chaos anymore, because because at some point, like, the business has to make sense for our family too, if
Yes.
we're going to do it for the long haul.
Yes.
And so I think that in the same way, like, when I started the business, we didn't have kids, like Luke and I were married and we really enjoyed our work. So we would like wake up and run hard every single day, and then we would do it again the next day. And then I have these tiny humans that, like, I actually want to make sure that I'm home for dinner every night, and I want to. And then my son had the audacity to start kindergarten, and that meant that he actually had a schedule too. And so to find time to say, like, okay, I need to not work every Saturday of my life, because if I do, I'm going to miss out on some things. And so that means making choices, and that was one of the choices we made. And so for a while we said, okay, no weddings, but we're going to do these other things instead. And we'll still do birthday cakes. We'll still do this, that, and the other thing. But those are hard things to staff for. And most of the time I ended up back in there too, just doing it because I love it and because other people couldn't. And so I think some of it for us was to say, are we a bakery that has a coffee shop now? Or are we like really a coffee company? And the bakery could exist to support this. And so we also had the largest spreadsheet you've ever seen, where we're like trying to figure out just what's actually profitable too. And at the end of the day, we decided, like, if the bakery functions to support the coffee company, it's actually more profitable and it provides actual freedom in our family life too. And so we made that choice about a year ago, and it was harder than I thought it was going to be, but also so helpful.
What a challenging and beautiful decision and process, looking at the things that are important to you and to your family. And, heart comes through in coffee and baking and food. You're delivering a smile with those things, and making sure that you still have a smile on the other end of the counter or the whisk or whatever you're working with is a wonderful thing. And that's to be able to move through that, instead of like, okay, well, this is what we do, so we're just going to keep doing this, to be able to even take a moment to step back and go, whoa, we should change direction. And then taking a little bit of a risk there, right? Because you're totally changing things. You sort of 180 the business a little bit on, like you said, coffee first, bakery to support the coffee shop. And especially when your heart started with the bakery and being able to do those things. But I have a feeling that that has been a good decision, and probably leads to future happiness, and all of those your mom and your kids around you will appreciate those decisions and recognize that as well. It's hard to be a business owner. It
is. But again, like, called other businesses and other towns and talked to other industry folks to say, what are you saying? How are you tackling this? Am I on the right track looking here? And so thankful for people that were willing to share their experience and what they were doing as well. So we really worked to streamline our baked good menu this last year, but kept the things that people really wanted. And I think it's the thing that you see, like 20% of the product is 80% of your sales. Is that like the ratio that people always say?
Pareto principle, something like that. Yeah.
So of course we're keeping cinnamon rolls and blueberry muffins and breakfast burritos, and those are the things that were the top sellers all the time anyway. And so we were keeping these ingredients on the shelf for things for the one-off lemon cakes that are delicious, but they aren't making the top 5 sellers ever. And so now we have the opportunity to offer those things when we want, when it makes sense. Mother's Day special or something for a random holiday. And so I think it just gives us more control over it, and a way that hopefully customers can still access, but we get to do it for the long haul this way.
Absolutely. And, cinnamon rolls and blueberry muffins, excellent choice. Tell me about the salsa for your breakfast burritos.
We get it from Jacobos, which is a small business here in town. We could make it ourselves, but why? Why replicate something that's already been perfected?
I was hoping you were going to say that. So Jacobo's 24th and L makes amazing salsa. And I can pretty much guarantee if you go down there, first of all, bring cash because you'll need it. But they sell the salsa down there at the counter, and their chips is awesome back at the deli counter. And there will be a line that goes all the way around the produce counter, and a lot of people looking for salsa and carnitas and stuff. But so
it's worth it.
Yeah, 100%. And so to have that for your breakfast burritos, to have that, that fresh, that cilantro and tomato, a little onion in there, is fantastic. So I love the using the phrase hyper local. You're doubling down on the localness that is Hardy being a local coffee shop, and then also bringing in a local provider there to provide the salsa for your burritos, and
Absolutely.
Awesome salsa, which is really cool.
Yeah,
so.
we love working with other small businesses, and I just think if there's any chance to taste something and say, this is uniquely Omaha,
yes,
that's a win. I think that sometimes I look at the landscape of what's happening in the city and the world, and I get a little anxious that we're going to look up someday and it's just going to be like a mass of large corporate chains. And it's just so disorienting if you're doing that. You're like, wait, what city am I in? What part of the world am I in? Like when you get to visit a place and you make the decision to vote with your dollars, whether that's at Hardy or any other small business in Omaha, we need to work to earn that. Like we need to make sure that we're offering things that are of value, that are truly worth stopping in for. But it's just, if you can find those things, it's such a better experience, in my humble opinion.
I think you're 100% correct. And how special is that if you do come to Omaha and try Hardy Coffee or Jacobo Salsa or whatever you're getting, that you're going to take that back with you. And, I had that thing in Omaha. And there's something extra special about that, experience that having that there as well. It's just super cool. So if one is not a coffee drinker, not me, what can you get at Hardy if I'm not drinking coffee?
So many things. We already talked about the cinnamon rolls and the breakfast burritos and the blueberry muffins.
Of course.
So lots of good food options.
Yes.
But then if you also want to look at our menu for drinks, our tea menu is delightful. We get all of our tea from Artemis Tea and Botanicals. So Andrea Lossi, she actually mixed her teas at our downtown shop, like in the back kitchen, for several years before she opened her own location in Blackstone. And so also hyper-local. Nice. We get to have that deliciousness. Right now on the menu, the thing that I drink every day. I start the morning with a variety of different coffee, and then I do a maple matcha in the afternoon, and that's my go-to. This season, our chai is delightful. That's one that when we bought the coffee shop, the initial coffee shop, Aromas downtown, we tried every chai on the market, and I just couldn't find one that I liked. Like they were either too sweet or it had like different notes that I wasn't loving. And so we decided just to make it ourselves. And so we did that stovetop for the longest time. And then we started partnering with Hugo Tea in Kansas City.
Okay.
And so they actually do our recipe in very large batches, and then they package it in like the wine in a box sort of situation.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's shelf stable, and then they ship those to us. And so we're able to have our proprietary blend that's available to sell and to serve. And so that's one of my favorite things too.
So I need to back you up because you perked up my ears at maple matcha. So I have had plenty of matcha. I've had ube matcha. I've had all sorts of stuff. Tell me about a maple matcha.
It's so straightforward, and we tried it with a variety of different things, but just pure maple syrup as the sweetener, and then you do your choice of milk, and then our delightful matcha powder from Artemis. And so it's very straightforward. It's not complicated, but it is delightful.
Just delivers on tasty flavor.
It's about like getting the right balance of the maple syrup in there, but it's one that we really like this season.
That sounds fun to try for sure. Oh, fantastic. So speaking of milk options and things like that, so if somebody is doing dairy-free or something along those lines, are there various milks available if I go get my cold brew?
You do. Yeah, we have oat milk, we have almond milk, we have soy milk, whole milk. Yeah, your non-fat.
Everything.
A little bit of everything. So
Perfect. Well, during this conversation, earlier I had thanked you for the Highlander staff. I need to thank you a second time, by the way, for your West staff that is with your 144th, correct?
yeah, that's in the Chalkland neighborhood. So
Your newest location, correct?
Yep.
I was having a very bad day. In fact, I had a rental pickup truck full of stuff that I needed to get rid of. So, of course, it's a rental, so I'm on a time limit. And I think that was probably the day that I went to River City Recycling, and they had a large infrastructure issue and were randomly closed on the day that I decided to preemptively rent the truck and go drop all this stuff off, which meant a drive to the Sarpy County landfill, which was open for there. And I will tell you, I was in very much need of a cup of coffee or something. And your staff through the drive-thru, as I'm going through this drive-thru with this silly pickup truck full of a bunch of stuff, definitely helped me out. And, we were kind of talking about, just helping somebody's day out, or at least not making it worse. And I will tell you, made it infinitely better.
Oh, good.
So they were in the exact right place at the right time before I headed south to the dump there. So thank you to that staff for helping me out on that particular day.
They do a great job. And there's additional obstacles at a drive-through location where you don't get to make eye contact. You don't get to welcome someone as they walk in the door. So they really go above and beyond to make that connection over a headset instead and through the actual pickup window. And I think the number of regulars that we have at that location is a testament to just the customer service our team is able to provide.
With expanding, so starting, with the old market in Benson and Highlander, and now farther west in Chalco, expanding as a business, I think, can be very hard sometimes. Going from one location to two, I think, might be the hardest, possibly. I don't know, because I do not own a small business, but I guess maybe what helps you, or if you were to give other small businesses advice or guidelines or something, are there any nuggets of wisdom that have helped you be successful? Because it seems to be working well as you expand.
Yeah, I would agree that going from 1 to 2 locations was probably the hardest. I think that when you go from 1 to 2 locations is the moment you realize you can't be 2 places at once. And so when everything was at one shop, then you can put out the fires yourself and you can just live there and it's fine. You'll figure it out. And when there's a second location, you realize I need to actually communicate clearly enough so that whoever is there, or that when my manager is there, or whatever the structure of leadership looks like, whoever is there can solve this problem like I would if I was there. And so a lot of the things that are just living in your head need to be documented. There has to be a checklist. There has to be a process. There has to be expectations that are shared. You have to paint what done looks like. So you say, okay, I hear you said that you took care of that, but tell me exactly what that looks like. And it's not micromanaging, it's just managing. And it's the process of creating what the expectation is. And I think also realizing that there's no substitute for just spending time together too. And so I think that there still has to be the process of not just the stuff, not the things to do, but the cultural DNA that we're trying to say, this is what it feels like, this is what it looks like, this is what it is when you're leading at Hardy. And so there's not really a fast track to that. It's about weekly meetings and daily check-ins and time together. And so for us, it's a slow process. People are like, man, you guys really blew up. You're everywhere. It's we have 4 locations over 15 years. So I don't know if it's blowing up. It's just slow, steady, intentional progress.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a stretch in there where we grew too quickly. And we had to make the decision to slow down, to do it well, to do it with people that were led well. I think that in my experience, and this isn't always true, but the vast majority of people really want to be good at their jobs.
I agree.
And if they aren't, it's usually because there's a breakdown in leadership or communication from the top. And so anytime that there's been those issues over the years, we hold ourselves accountable first and then find ways to fill those gaps or to make sure that people have the opportunity to be retrained or redirected, or maybe just put in a different seat on the bus and to find a way to use their skills in a different way. Once somebody's on our team, we work as hard as we can to find a way to keep them there. and to help them do it well.
Yeah, there's a lot of leadership aspects that you hit on that I think are so important. And when expanding from one spot to two, all of a sudden delegation and trust in your team becomes infinitely more important, because you said it. You can't be in two places at once. The other thing that I really appreciate that you said there too was communication of expectations, because you might have it in your head as a leader, as a manager, how things are supposed to go. But like you said, if it wasn't written down or you didn't speak it to the person, they just don't know. And then if they don't deliver and you go, well, why didn't you do that? Or, well, you never told me, so, and like you said, those weekly meetings too, where you have continual communication. How are things? What's working? What's not working? And, between the different, and something that maybe is working downtown on the old market maybe isn't working as well out west, where you have a drive-through where you might need different processes or things, or maybe we need to move the cups because you have both the counter and the drive-through going for the same cups, or we need cups in two spots. I don't mean to, I don't know all the nuances of running a coffee shop, but my guess is there's a lot of things you bump into, and that communication is so vitally important to keep things growing and functioning.
It is. And to say, I am not on bar or in the bakery in the same way that I was when we started. And so I need to make sure that I hire people that I trust to make those decisions, or to make sure that they're advocating for the space, to say, we really need to make this change, and here's why. And if you can make a good case for it, by all means, let's do that. Let's do whatever is going to work best for now. And we might try something else very soon. We're not married to any of our processes. We want to make sure that, at the end of the day, we need a great product, and we need to have approachable spaces, and we need to make sure that we are, honestly, that's the gist of it. We need to make sure that there's excellence across the board, and there's a lot of different ways to get there. Yeah.
Well, and over those, now 15 years as we are talking here today, so many changes from starting as a bakery, from one location to two, to first getting your coffee beans roasted for you, to now roasting them, going from a 5-pound roaster to much, much more than that, and adjusting the bakery to fit the needs of the business. You have adjusted a lot and adapted a lot over those 15 years. And I think that's that ability to sit back for just a moment, even though maybe it's just a couple of moments, and assess the situation and talk things through is so important. And I'm glad that has been able to help you navigate what you want to do with your business and life, both personal and professional, and help, Hardy Coffee be what you want it to be.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the hardest question to answer. You build this thing and it takes on a bit of a life of its own. And so to stop long enough to say, wait, what do we want? What do we want? What do we want in the business? What do we want in life? Are we building the kind of business that serves that well, that serves our customers well?
I love it. And that sense of family that comes through with those decisions, be that the restaurant family or your own family, is wonderful. And if I may ask, as you said, your folks have been very supportive through the whole thing. The name of Hardy Coffee, a tribute to your family there. Growing up, was there anything that you used to cook or bake with your parents that kind of sticks with you?
A little bit of everything. I mean, we always joke that we should have just put a couch in the kitchen of our house growing up, because it seemed like that's where people gathered no matter what. There's very comfortable chairs in other rooms, but somehow you're draped across the table or sitting on a counter. And so we just spent a lot of time in there. My mom's a phenomenal cook, and so we gathered people around food. And I continue to think that there's just no more authentic way to bring people together than to feed them well. And so, fantastic birthday cakes to delicious soup to lasagna for days. I mean, my mom made it all. But I think that I learned not just a love of cooking and baking from her, but the art of gathering people. And so I think we get to do that in our own homes sometimes and through the business every day.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I love the couch in the kitchen concept. That's beautiful.
Probably need to like Scotch guard it just to be safe.
Oh, but, no question. Maybe one of those old school like plastic covers on there or something.
Yeah.
Something you can hose off in case lasagna goes rogue or something along those lines. Well, that is wonderful. Well, it has been so awesome to learn more about Hardy Coffee, something that I do enjoy, and how things are, and some of those aspects of a very multifaceted business, because it's not just serving the cup of coffee; it's everything that takes you to get that cup of coffee into somebody's hand, in addition to the bakery and those things, and all the business decisions and staffing decisions. That's a lot. So, Autumn Pruitt of Hardy Coffee, thank you so much for spending your time with me today.
Thanks for having me. It feels like fun to get to know each other better. I feel like we see each other in the shop often, and to know more about you, and hopefully the other way around too.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much again for spending your time with me, and we will gently fade the microphones down here in a second. But before we go, as we say, until we eat again, stay hungry. Bye-bye.
Our show is recorded and produced by Saturday Omaha. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as email SaturdayOmaha@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and stay hungry.
Saturday Omaha.
Eat this.